use SAD, I mean seasonal affective disorder. Not sure what it is? Let's talk about it. Hi, it's that time of year. Especially if you live in the northern states, as we do, it gets dark way too early and doesn't stay light long enough. It's still dark when you get up in the morning. It's not unusual to go to work in the dark and come home in the dark. And we have all heard of SAD. And the SAD I'm talking about is called Seasonal Affective Disorder. Let's talk about what it is, what it looks like, and how to deal with it. So seasonal affective disorder is considered a subtype of major depressive disorder. It typically onsets in the autumn and starts to get better in the spring. Approximately 5% of Americans experience it. It's interesting when you think about that, but we'll talk about why in just a second. Predominantly women report it, but it's very possible men underreport, which is not unusual, especially with depression. So the interesting thing about SAD is it's typically diagnosed more in the northern states. States including Washington, Idaho, Montana, everybody on the border, Alaska. The farther south you go, the less differential there is. Like, an example of that would be in the winter. I grew up in southeastern Indiana, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. You know, the sun still in the winter would go down around 5:30. Not a big deal. You were home, you were having dinner, not a big deal. Where I'm at right now, it goes down at 4 or a little after, and that is early. And by the time you get to the winter solstice, it's going down like before 4 o'clock. That's a lot, and it comes up like at 7:30. So that's a long, pronounced amount of darkness that can be very disheartening. Add to that winter weather. You know, we do get beautiful sunny days in the winter. They're usually very freaking cold. We also have days of, where it's gray, just gray all the time. And that's hard. So the difference of typical major depressive disorder and seasonal affective disorder is the pattern of onset, which is kind of a technical term. Experiencing the major amount of symptoms between autumn to spring is one of the big hallmarks of seasonal affective disorder. So some signs of it might be changes in appetite. You may not eat at all, but you may eat like crazy. Sugar cravings increase with SAD. We like carbs when we're not feeling good. Hypersomnia, you're sleeping all the time. You want to just curl up in a blanket and take a nap. Thinking and concentrating can be slowed. Severe symptoms can include pronounced feelings of helplessness and or hopelessness, which are kind of the hallmarks of major depressive disorder, or thoughts of ending your life. And that's when a safety plan needs to be created and the importance of your social support becomes more important than ever. So as I said, diagnosing seasonal affective disorder is not a typical diagnosis. I can't go to that manual I showed you, the DSM-5 TR, and say, you have seasonal affective disorder. If I were doing an assessment on you and it appeared that you had seasonal affective disorder, my apologies, it would typically be diagnosed as major depressive disorder with seasonal changes. And that could change because the manual is constantly being looked at, reviewed, and things are added or removed. So a major hallmark of a problem is decompensation in parts of your life. Relationships. You may be struggling with romantic relationships or work relationships. Work in general, enjoying your life. It's really affecting your overall quality of life. But there's something really important we also have to think about. typically when I'm meeting somebody for the first time who's never had any kind of mental health issues, one of the first things I recommend is that they see their primary care physician to rule out any health issues. We always want to do that. If you feel like you're struggling with these issues, call your physician. Let your physician know and go see them. If they tell you it's mental health related, great. Now you know. It's not trying to tell you that it's all in your head. They're not trying to tell you it's not real. They're trying to tell you it's real, but there's no medical cause for it, so to speak. And if you wonder if that is an issue for you, you'll typically see a pattern of change around the time change each year. You know, it goes crazy in my neck of the woods. I live in Washington State, and nobody likes the time change. Of course, they also fuss when it changes back, but, you know, we don't like the time change, and we don't like the dark. So everybody kind of fusses. You've probably heard the winter blues, pretty normal. But the difference is winter blues are not feeling happy for a day. You know, just feeling off for a day. You can give yourself the grace, you know that. Resolves pretty quickly. But you're able to continue to work and engage without other significant disruptions in your life. You know, you're not calling out sick because you're just so down you don't want to deal with anything. You're not eating or overeating. You're not doing things that, you know, you're just able to function. Whereas SAD tends to have effects more like major depressive disorder, such as feeling listless, sad or down most of the day, nearly every day. And that's a big, big flag. If you can say you feel that, definitely get checked out by your PCP, and then they can help you find a therapist or give you some referrals. And if not, I always recommend calling your insurance company. If not there, then check out your community health organization and see if they have anyone available. Losing interest in activities you once enjoyed. That can be a challenge to kind of motivate yourself to try to do things. Having low energy or feeling sluggish. Having problems with sleeping too much or sleeping too little. Experiencing carbohydrate cravings, overeating, and weight gain. Who doesn't love a good carb? What can I say? Having difficulty concentrating. It can be really hard. You kind of find yourself rereading the same sentence in a book 3 or 4 times, or not losing your place very easy. You know, sitting at your desk at work or at home and you're like, what am I supposed to be doing again? Feeling hopeless, worthless, or guilty, which is really rough. Having thoughts of not wanting to live. And we never want to dismiss those. You know, those are serious. Those are important. And tell someone. And if you can't tell anybody in your social circle, call 988. If it's where you're making plans, call 911. Don't be afraid to say, I'm struggling. It takes more strength to say you're struggling than it does to hide it. What are the higher risks? Well, women, but some of that is somewhat attributed to women will seek help quicker than men will. People living in northern states near the Canadian border. So all y'all who are in the northern states and you wonder why it makes you cranky, well, this part of it. Alaska. Alaska goes weeks without seeing the sun in certain areas. So they have a lot of issues with SAD. And you're at higher risk for SAD if you struggle with bipolar disorder. Your depression can become much more fierce, so to speak. But what causes it? Why do we react this way, so pronounced, to a shorter day? You know? That's so weird sometimes. Our biological clock, meaning our circadian rhythm. Remember we talked about that the fall and winter tend to be longer dark, lighter day. So if you're dark, if it's dark, that's part of what helps tell your body to start to produce melatonin. You're getting tired. You're wanting to go to bed. I know right after the time changes, it starts getting dark at like 5:30. I'm like, okay, I'm going to bed. Oh, wait, I can't. I'll be up at 4 if I do that, or earlier. Not good for the work life. Serotonin levels. It can affect, serotonin levels are the neurotransmitters that affect mood. Reduced sunlight can cause a drop in serotonin, and that may trigger depression. Melatonin levels. Changes of seasons can disrupt the balance of melatonin. Like I said, melatonin tends to be produced when it's dark. Our bodies are starting to get the idea that it's time for sleep when our interior and exterior are getting very dark. Melatonin plays a role in our sleeping patterns and mood. So what are the risk factors? Family history. If you have a family history of depression, or someone saying that they really struggle during the fall and winter months, that is always a good indicator to a possible problem for yourself. You already have a diagnosis of major depressive disorder or bipolar. This is a great one. Living far away from the equator. Those of us who paid attention in geography, I think it is, know that the equator is kind of where it's the hottest part of the earth and the lightest part of the earth, so to speak. Everybody who lives in tropical rainforests in the southern hemisphere, Australia, they're closer to the equator, so they have pretty warm days all year round. Whereas up here, we have to rely on the good old tilt of the earth. At the equator, the tilt's not so great because it's the middle. But up here, the farther north you go, the more pronounced it is. The reason that Alaska sees darkness longer is because they're tilted farthest away by the winter solstice. And we're starting now, at the time of filming this, to turn back, which is the cool part. So, low levels of vitamin D. Yes, that is very much a part of struggling with MDD and seasonal affective disorder. It isn't like an antidepressant. So it's not a bad idea, with consultation with your physician, to take a vitamin D supplement or take a multivitamin that has a good balance of vitamin D in it, so that you have it. Because what it can do, it doesn't necessarily take the symptoms away, but it can help manage them. Your vitamin D is such that you're doing well and doing things that are okay. You might not feel great, but you can handle it. So, how do we deal with treating it? Cognitive behavioral therapy, the granddaddy of all therapy. Most therapies are built on cognitive behavioral therapy. What is cognitive behavioral therapy? It's understanding what's going on and changing your thought pattern about it. Here's one of the ways I deal with seasonal affective disorder. I'm very fortunate. In my day job, I work from home. I'm a telehealth provider. So that's nice in and of itself, but I just wait it out. Okay, all I got to get to is December 21st or 20th or whatever it is each given year, because that's the shortest day of the year. And after that, it gets better. Every week, it gets better. On average, in January, you gain 20 minutes of daylight. And that keeps going. February, March, April, May. By the time we get to the summer solstice, we're running 15, 20 hours of daylight, but it's coming gradually. You'll start to notice you leave work and you can still see your car. Those kind of things are really important. Diet. As much as we love those carbs, we got to kind of keep a lid on them. If anything, looking at complex carbohydrates, especially if you have issues with things like type 2 diabetes, things like that. Whole grains are very important. Eating a whole grain cereal can help with that. You digest it slower. It can help kind of reduce those carb cravings. It's okay to have them once in a while in small amounts, because if you do it too much, it will cause And it triggers your happy spots. So paying attention to what you have in the house or in your place or in your wherever you're at. And if it's not there, you can't have it, right? You know, unless you want to get up and put your clothes on and run to the store, but a lot of us don't after a certain time of day. This is the one that everybody looks at me and goes, I don't want to. Exercise. Now understand when I say this and when I talk about it all the time, you are looking at someone who thought exercise was full of shit and then had to deal with my own health issues to get exercise. Any exercise will help you. If you are fortunate enough to be able to go to a Y that has a pool or something like that, you can start in a pool. That will also help seasonal affective disorder, believe it or not. If you can go to an indoor pool, that's just the idea of being in your swimsuit and having a good time, but it doesn't have to be that. Exercising at home. If you have certain video game platforms, the one I can think of off the top of my head is the Nintendo Switch or the Switch 2. You have games that are built for exercise and challenges. And what happens when you exercise is the feel-good chemicals are released. You will get endorphins. You will get serotonin. You will get dopamine. A lot of times I use that in my middle of my day. You know, I'll go do something in the middle of my day. If I get a longer something, I'll go to the gym and do something real quick. But if I can't, I'll go out and take a walk. Or I'll do it in the house. If you have something like Just Dance, great. That's exercise. Get your heart rate up. You are exercising. Something to consider. Vitamin D, like we talked about a few minutes ago, vitamin D is not a bad thing. Again, check with your doctor. But a supplement of vitamin D is never a bad thing. The people that I work with who are prescribers always like to encourage patients to do that. But again, always talk to your physician when you're starting supplements and make sure they're right for you. Spending time with others, you know, we kind of get into these patterns in the fall and winter season where we don't make the effort. It might be too cold. It might be snow on the ground. We might not want to deal with traffic. You know, we'll always find an excuse. But spending time with others is important. When you're not making connection, you're not making happiness. You know, humans are wired for this. This is what we are wired for. And we need to work on achieving that, making ourselves feel better. So something to consider. It can be your close family. You don't have to have a bunch of people around you. You don't have to go to a bar. You don't have to do any of that. But having time with others is always a good thing. And of course, once meeting with your provider, and if needed, a therapist, medication. You know, medication is not a bad thing. It just helps balance things out. You still have to learn how to deal with things too. Okay. We have to think about it as if it literally is in our year, a season. And we want to make sure we're aware of it, give ourselves the grace to experience it, and get it to a good place. So when spring starts rolling in and the birds you're hearing the birds chatting outside the window and you're starting to look at the lawn and go, oh, I think I probably should mow that. You can enjoy it and hold it in you. And I know you've missed it. So it's back. Our no bullshit corner. You know, seasonal affective depression is not fun. But it's really important to remember some really good things. Self-care is a necessity. It's not a luxury. It's a necessity. You remember when you get on an airplane and you're heading out to taxi to the runway and you've got all these flight attendants in the aisles and they're talking to you about everything goes on and about the masks that drop from the top. They tell you to put yours on first before you help anybody else. Because if you don't, you will collapse. I can't tell you how many patients I've had to teach that to, who struggle with it so hard, but you have to take care of yourself. It needs to be treated as important as eating or sleeping. I'm not joking when I say that. That is definitely no bullshit. But it's also important to remember, If you're feeling any kind of suicidal ideation, which means you're thinking about it, or thinking about how you might do it, or where you might do it, you write a note, call for help. 988, 911. Go to your nearest emergency room. If you can't get yourself there, call somebody who will come and get you there. I promise you, the people that are trained to help you with this are not there to judge you. They're there to help you out of your despair. Don't do it alone. You don't have to do this alone. The people who love you care about you. Your friends, your family, even the trained therapists care. You know, we don't do this because for the money. We do it because we want to help people. And we want to be there for you. So don't be afraid to go to counseling. I promise. It won't suck. Until our next episode, have a good one. See you next time.